Okay. So we have just read. What section was this? This was the acknowledgements section. We are now actually going to jump over to Appendix A. Okay. This could take a while. Obviously, this whole thing could take a while, but I'm not going to do a lot of commentary. I hope on this one. Frankly, some of the terms will probably be new to me. So I'm just going to try and absorb as much as possible. I'm just reading through them so that we are all as much on the same page as possible. AAT, Administrative Appeals Tribunal. ADL, Assistance with Daily Life. ADS, Australia's Disability Strategy. AFSR, actually, hang on. How much am I looking at here? All right. There is a lot. I'm gonna skip the acronym. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave this open as we read through things. That way I can if jump to the acronym and tell you what the acronym is at the time. Yeah, Disability Discrimination Act 1992. Isn't that nice? Where is the sorry, I just want to see if they're doing the IDS for they don't have the IDF listed here. That surprises me. Um hmm. That actually does surprise me. But yeah, they've got a lot of other things on here that I think are really important to have. Um, anyway, let's move on to the glossary because I think this is actually going to be what's more useful um, going forwards for us to read. 24/7 living supports. Participants who require at least 8 hours of active support and or supervision with activities of daily living and some level of support for the remaining hours of the day while at home, including overnight, whether active or passive assistance. For some participants, 24/7 support may entail active support for every minute of every day. However, this is only in specified circumstances. This is really weirdly me because how they define active support is actually what I need. I actually need active support 24/7. But like right now, I am streaming. I have no support while streaming. I don't like even if I had a care worker right now, which I don't. My care worker would almost certainly be in the other room, just kind of passively listening for, hey, has Alan stopped talking? Maybe I should go check and see if he's in an episode. I don't need the support unless I'm in an episode. But in order for me to have support workers, they need to be classed as active care, so I need to be classified as needing active care, which is a problem because one of the problems I have with passive care is that's like sleepover shifts. You know, if my care worker is asleep while I'm having a medical episode, it doesn't matter that the care worker is present. I have literally woken up naked in a closet with my care worker supposedly asleep in the room next to me. Like on the other side of the wall of the closet that I am in, naked. And I have been in there long enough that when I came out of the episode, my legs were cramped and I was able to get myself physically out of the cupboard, but I could not physically straighten my legs. That happened under NDIS. That was part of the story I have about respite homes. But that care worker technically was doing the right thing because the information they had was that it was passive care. It was the sleepover shift. So, yeah. But convincing the NDIS that you need active care, that they don't consider, oh, your disability is spontaneous? Well, that's not active care 24 hours, is it? Yeah. Um, yeah, that is a problem with active and passive assistance and how it actually often ends up getting translated in practice. But the point of this, like, is reading what that means. Probably should have had that rant when we get to talking about active. Oh, they don't seem to have active. Okay, maybe do they have a section on assistance? Yeah. Yes. Okay, I'm glad I said that then because I may not have said it otherwise. All right. Access lists. A series of lists designed to automate and streamline access decisions for people with disability to the NDIS. I hate that this is important. It is stupidly important. This sort of automation and streamlining is so important for effective treatment. The problem is that they often lock themselves down. So if you don't meet this sort of streamlined automated system, you're just overlooked, and that is a problem. I'm fine with this being a default sort of reference point, but it should be a reference point, not the be all and end all, which a lot of the time under NDIS and also the DSP, things have been treated as if this was the be all and end all. Anyway, sorry, I'll keep reading it. List A, a list of conditions that are likely to meet all elements of disability requirement under Section 24 of the NDIS Act. List B, likely to result in an impairment under the same Act. List C, programs previously funded by state and territory governments where access was deemed to be equivalent to NDIS access criteria. List D, a list of conditions where a child under 7 will meet early intervention requirements under the same Act. Alright, so as I said, this is actually very important. Overall, it's kind of good, but I want to raise one issue with it. Hopefully, one of the recommendations is for them to update these lists, because several parts of this list are based on the DSM-4. My disability is not on these lists. My disability is in the DSM-5. The DSM-5 was first published in 2013, around the same time that this came out, which means functionally it was published, I think it was actually published after the NDIS was ratified. But the point is that it was never updated. And so a lot of the terminology in these lists is outdated terminology. I believe Asperger's syndrome, for example, is still on the list. It was when I last checked it. It has been a while since I last checked it. But another problem with the NDIS is that it is based on the DSM-4, and I don't even think it was even based on the latest version of the DSM-4. It was based on one of the earlier versions, one of the early 2000s versions of the DSM-4. But it should be the DSM-5. And part of the reason it is not based on the DSM-5 is because we haven't had a review like this in 10 years. The entire time that the DSM-5 has existed, we did not have a review. So hopefully these lists will actually be updated and not just carbon copied over from what it was before. And if that happens, maybe they'll actually recognize my disability. That would be great. Adolescents, individuals in the phase of life between childhood and adulthood, roughly ages 10 to 19. Aging SDA, specialist disability accommodation, my ability to speak English is dropping, dwellings with a design category of basic and all legacy stock. The basic design category applies to SDA dwellings that were built before 1st of April 2016 without specialist design features, but with a location or other features that cater for the needs of people with disability and assist with the delivery of support services. Legacy stock refers to SDA dwellings that are designed for house 6 or more long-term residents. So, SDA, Special Disability Accommodation, that is something, I believe it was added to the NDIS. I don't think it was part of the original I can't remember if it was in the original legislation or not. I actually can't remember, but a lot of the practicalities of it were developed and implemented during the lifetime of the NDIS. And this is an example of the NDIS trying to achieve things that arguably should be done by other parts of the government. You can make an argument that specialist disability accommodation should honestly be all government housing. All government housing should have disability access, some basics of disability access, because that doesn't just affect disabled people, it affects normal people. If a normal person suffers a temporary injury and is temporarily on crutches or is temporarily in a wheelchair, and their house is not designed to be compatible with those tools, that's a problem. So the fact that this is in the NDIS, and that this is a part of the NDIS, it looks like a good thing. I would argue it's a bad thing. This needs to be a standard across all parts of the country, not just in this very narrow field that is almost entirely run by for-profit organizations, which, that is a Big problem. The for-profit side of the whole thing. Remember the story about Respite Home that I just said? Yeah, that's a story about a for-profit respite home, which is basically all respite homes, and that was one of these places. So, anyway, annual financial sustainability report. The report provides an assessment of the financial sustainability of the NDIS and is required under the NDIS Act. It is produced using data at 30th of June each year. A summary of each report is included, in the NDIA annual report. That is a major reference point if you want to talk about the budget for anything, really. I will have to. I don't actually think I've read this year's report. I know I skimmed through it. I don't think I actually sat down and read through it like to the level of detail I'm coming. I think I just read their summaries this year. Wait, no, I did read it. Yeah, I did. Nope. I'm misremembering. Yep. Nope. Cool. Okay. Um, a digital tool that allows software and digital product developers to plug into parts of existing digital systems when designing and building new tools and products. APIs can be used to enable data share. Oh, what I didn't do was I didn't take the time to compare it directly to the previous years, and so I remembered that my own reading of it was insufficient to my own standards. But I know I did read it. It did not commit to memory as much, and I did not do a comparative study at all. Yeah, so that's what I was thinking there. All right, sorry. APIs can be used to enable data sharing between organizations and government agencies. Yes, this is good, but it depends on the structure of the tool. And the fact of the matter is anybody who knows anything about issues with programming, programs can often operate in ways that the programmers do not expect, do not understand, and it's really hard to call a government up on a programming error. Like, oh, the system moved you to the wrong place. Well, it wasn't a person, and we can't blame the system, or we can't change the system. Like there's nobody's really to blame. It was just an error. Like, this can cripple people's lives. Fix those errors. Make somebody responsible for them. Yeah, it can be great, it can be amazing, it can be the most beneficial thing in the world, but the fact that it often is used to shirk responsibility, whether intentionally used to shirk responsibility or just accidentally used, is a problem. Um, I'm enjoying listening to this. Ah, thank you. I'm glad that somebody is. I'm glad that this is beneficial to someone. Um, All right, a digital tool that allows software and digital product developers to plug into part of existing digital systems when designing a... I just read that. I was reading through that. I'm just like, yeah, why is this familiar? Sorry. The Applied Principles and Tables of Support, APTOS. The Applied Principles and Table of Support are agreed between Australian, state and territory disability ministers. They set out roles and responsibilities of the NDIS and other service systems having regard to the funding and provision of supports to people with disability. I haven't read this one. I always had it on the thing to read. Like, there were a bunch of things that I had to read after reading through the legislation, and dealing with my own disability, dealing with the nightmare that has been NDIS for the last couple of years, dealing with my master's degree, which that was like fine. Like yesterday, I finally finished my degree is officially over. Celebrations. My celebration is now talking about NDIS. Isn't that great? Anyway, but yeah, like I've had a lot this year. I had no supports for some of the year. I'm going to have potentially probably no supports for the start of next year. I didn't really want to deal with a lot of like my personal review is incomplete because I never read a lot of these very important documents, and that was just because I couldn't afford to be working on them because it increased the likelihood of me having an episode. Speaking of which, I apparently already had an episode today, so I'm actually highly unlikely to have another episode now, so this is so good, such perfect timing. But apparently I did have an episode today. But this, like, reading this out telling these stories, doing this sort of thing, increases the chances that I'm just going to spontaneously pass out. And when you're actively dealing with NDIS, when you've got all these appointments, when you've got all of these boxes you need to tick within a set time frame, and that is the part of your disability that you can't handle without supports, and the NDIS is specifically denying you those supports, yeah, there's a reason why my own reviews often did not get to the extent that I wanted them to get to, and that is because I'm disabled, and yeah. Moving on. Assistance with daily life. An NDIS support category that covers a range of supports, including assistance with self-care activities and assistance with household tasks, such as gardening or cleaning. It also includes community nursing supports and short-term accommodation and assistance. Supported independent living is also funded under this support category. The NDIA sometimes refers to this ADL support category as core daily activities in published reports. Not much to say there, except to say that the way they divide the budget is hugely problematic. Oh yes, we have pre-allocated the money to this particular support. Oh, you can't access that support for whatever reason, including the fact that maybe you didn't need that support, or the amount of money we put in that category is entirely inappropriate to what you actually need, either way over the top or way under. Well, too bad. You may have to... sorry, this is a really big pet peeve of mine. You, the disabled people, may have to abuse taxpayer money just so that you can get a review. Just so that you can get appropriate funds, you may have to abuse taxpayer money. Because the people who allocated it in the first place didn't know what they were talking about, didn't consult you, the disabled people, didn't read the reports, didn't read the recommendations by the very people that actually make those recommendations. They just put down whatever they wanted, put it into a category that is wholly inappropriate, and a value that may be wholly inappropriate, or either way too much or way too little, and the disabled person can't do anything about it, except mismanage it and abuse it, because the only way they can get it reviewed and to get the appropriate funds set is by spending all the money. That is a big pet peeve of mine. I am so pissed off about this. You can probably hear it in my voice. When I got my first NDIS package, every single person, including the person who wrote the package, told me it was inappropriate. The person who approved me onto NDIS, like the people on the freaking board, told me that they believed that what I received was inappropriate. And I decided, based on the recommendation of some of the people I spoke to in that whole thing, I was just like, okay, I'm going to try and not spend the money. I'm going to try and pursue a review to get the appropriate amount of money, and I will only spend what money I need to get that review. They refused to look... Well, I submitted the review. I submitted everything. They refused to look at the goddamn review. Sorry. They refused to look at the review until I had spent all the money. So I had to mismanage this budget and spend money that was inappropriate and could not actually provide me the supports that I needed, just to get a new budget that still doesn't give me the supports I need. Which means I'm probably going to have to do that all over again. And I hate that. I detest that. That is so bad. And I am not the only disabled person who has to deal with that. And sure, some people don't care about that. But when people talk about how, oh yes, there are some bad actors who abuse the system, we're forced to abuse the system just so that we can make the argument that the system, that what we've received is inappropriate. And that is a horrifically bad part of the system. I'm hoping that that is something that is going to be changed. I'm hoping that that is something that will be recognized in this review. It is 100% something that I emailed to them, and it's one of like those 3,000 whatever reports. I have sent them that, and they responded to that one, so they know that that is an issue that exists. I don't know how prevalent it is. I know that it has affected. Like, I've read other people's stories, and they have talked about that as well. I don't know if that is actually going to be addressed, but that is the primary abusers of NDIS are private companies. Following that, but even though the private companies are the primary abusers, it shows up as a disabled person abusing the funds because of how it's set up. And when it's not the private company, it's the disabled person who is actively abusing the funds, often because they can't use the funds appropriately without abusing it first, because it is designed for abuse. It is a huge peeve of mine. I have brought this up directly with Shorten's office. I hope I've been listened to. I don't know that I honestly don't know if I have been listened to when I have said this. I know people have heard me say this. I don't know if it has taken a step beyond the person on the other side. I don't know if they communicated it up the chain or down the chain or to wherever it needed to go. I don't know if it was realistically factored in to any decisions that were made. I do know that it was heard by at least a couple of people who should be in a position to do something about it, but I'm not convinced that it was listened to, because the responses that I got never convinced me that they understood that that was a problem or why that was a problem. At least not for the disabled person. And sure, even if they're only looking at it in terms of an economic thing, we need to cut down on that or we need to fix that. If they cut down on that badly, then it cripples the disabled person even more. So, yeah, that is a major pet peeve of mine, and it's a very recent one, and it's an active one, because it's looking like I'm going to have to do it again for my next review. In fact, arguably I am and have done it again already, depending on what argument you make. Yeah, and I hate it. I freaking hate it. But I have all the justifications, I have all the medical professionals, I have almost every single step in the chain. I got pre-approval of what needs to be done. And those people acknowledged that I had to spend the money inappropriately in order to get to the next step. Which I'm glad that and I have that in writing, so I have a very strong defense if I ever had to defend myself. But it's so shocking that that exists. It is so incredibly unnecessary. Yeah, okay, I'm moving on. Sorry about that rant, although I hope that was actually, that's probably what some of you are here for, to be perfectly honest. Alright, that was that. Australian Government Digital Service Standard Criteria. A set of best practice principles for designing and delivering government services.